Welcome to this session, the first session in PSY111 Introduction to Psychology. Uh, this session will be taken, this course generally will be taken by or headed by Associate Professor Emmanuel Al Hassan and my humble self, Mr. Jerry James Doka. And it is aimed to give us an in depth knowledge of what psychology is within the context of this course outline. The course, by the end of this module, will be able to understand and define what psychology is and explain psychology as a science of human behavior. It will also help us to understand the goals of psychology. And lastly, in this study session, we'll be able to understand the relevance of psychology in everyday life. Now, psychology is vital to understanding and the prediction of human behavior. And what do I mean by that? The science of psychology has really helped human beings understand why another person or he himself behaves the way he does. Though there have been misconceptions about what psychology is due to either media influences and even people with half knowledge of psychology who believe it the way they think it is. Some of the funny experiences I've had is when people believe that a psychologist act like a fortune teller and can predict the future. Now, their understanding of prediction is not the way psychologists believe or does it. Their understanding of prediction is that whenever he sees you, he look at your face and he just conclude on things based on maybe metaphysical knowledge or spiritual knowledge, as a native doctor will do or as a prophet will prophesy. But the science of psychology, it actually follows a scientific procedure that requires one to have a guiding principle or a guideline of protocols he or she must follow in order to come up with a valid conclusion about human behavior. Now, what is psychology? From the origin of this discipline, there have been very different ideas or misconceptions about what psychology is. At first, it is first derived from two Greek words, psyche and logos. Psyche meaning soul or mind, and logos meaning the study. So early scholars believe that psychology is a study of the mind. Now, but over time, there have been conflict in understanding or in defining what the mind is. And as a psychologist, the mind is not an object you can experimentally study or make conclusion about. And that is why over a period of time, with advances in knowledge, in viewpoint, in orientations, finally psychology comes to be defined as a scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. Now, the mental processes is what people call the mind. For example, thinking, the act of thinking, the act of memory, remembering, storage, recollection, they are all what we call mental processes. Language communication is a mental process. So we come to understand that it is not just as people assume to just be the study of the mind, but it is an understanding, it's a scientific procedure. It has a laid down procedure on how we can understand and study human behavior. And what do we mean by human behavior? Anything you do, physical or mentally, is considered a behavior. It can be physical in form of movement, communication, demonstration, dancing, and any visible or physical activities is part of a behavior. So, as I said, it means it can be behavior can be overt or covert, whichever way you see it, whichever way, as long as human is able to express himself in one way or the other, is considered a behavior. So, behavior generally is considered as any form of response to physical or internal stimulus. Now, as from the definition, you will discover that it is considered a science. But the question is, what is science about psychology? Now, the idea of science, there have been argument and there have been misconception about what science is, or what discipline constitute, or what principle constitute or can be regarded as a scientific principle. In psychology, we have laboratories, but the idea of our laboratory is not the one you come and see chemicals and some of those sophisticated chemistry lab, physics lab, and the rest. Our labs are filled with instruments that can stimulate human behavior. Why? Our labs are made to stimulate you to act in a particular way that will help us or give us a better understanding of what moves you and what influences you, who you influence, and what makes you to do that. So the why, the how, when, and who of behaviors are what psychology actually deal with. But they don't do that just by a form of a guesswork. They do it through a scientific laid down procedure. So psychology as a science is defined not by what it studies, but by how it studies. So science is not just about what you study, but it's a procedure, it's the procedural way of collecting, analyzing human behavior in a systematic, objective, verifiable measures that makes it a science. So as I say, psychology as a science deals systematically with human behavior, human motives, human feelings, human emotion, thoughts, and actions. Like other sciences, psychology discovers and explains the underlying laws and principles of behavior. It goes at describing, explaining, predicting, and finally modifying human behavior. So that's to tell you that our aim in psychology is not about any other thing. We're not talking about the universe. Even when we are talking about the universe, when we are talking about the ecosystem, when we are talking about the economy, when we are talking about the political arena, when we are talking about the health related factors, we are looking at that in relation to how it influences an individual's behavior. So at the end of the day, our behavior is our concern. So that is what makes psychology to be so relevant regardless of the field. Reason because wherever you are, whoever you have what it takes for psychology to study. In short, wherever you are is like a lab to a psychologist. In as much as we have a designated lab, the whole environment, the whole country, the whole neighborhood, the whole family is our lab. Reason because we are influenced by where we are, who we relate with, what we deal with, how we see things. Our viewpoint to life determines our behaviors. So, understanding human behavior the history of psychology and understanding human behavior came through the study of animals. And why do we use animals? Because at a point, we really want to understand how human being behaves. But we equally don't understand because we cannot cage an individual and start forcing him to act. and you know human beings are intelligent beings. As you are thinking of one thing, they are equally thinking of countering it so that you don't get the exact knowledge or information you're looking for. So it became easier at a point during the history of psychology, through the historical development, for psychologists, early psychologists or physiologists to come up to study animals with the aim of understanding what stimulates them. Over a period of time, they now translate this knowledge or generalize this knowledge to human behavior. There were studies of animals like dogs. There were studies of animals like rats. There were studies of animals like chimpanzee, all with the aim of helping an individual helping them to understand human and individuals' behavior, either in group context or in isolation. So some of the reasons why animals were used are for ethical reasons, whereby human being cannot be used in that context. So, and also to ensure that the right clues are studied, are interpreted well without having to be influenced by the individual. So, what are the characteristics of science that psychology use in understanding human behavior? One is objectivity. That is, when conducting any study, researchers remain unbiased and objective about their findings, about their observations, about their interpretation. Objectivity. Empirical evidence, meaning that it is not just based on a belief. Oh, I believe this will happen. How do you know the rain will fall today? No, I believe it will fall. No, I have faith it will fall. No, that is not what psychology looks for. It's not looking at your faith. It's not looking at your belief. It's not looking at your mindset. It's looking at empirical observation. Are these evidence practical? Can we demonstrate it again? Is it visible? That is what empiricism talks about. Control, meaning that you can be able to manage certain variables to ensure that others doesn't influence it. When we come to experimental method, you understand that there are in conducting experiment, you have to control for certain factors so that they don't confound the variables you are actually working with. So the principle of control ensures that you don't allow random situations or activities around to influence the person's behavior or the outcome of your studies. Hypothesis testing, making assumption and making tentative statement about possible relationship or occurrences, and collecting data in order to test some of the assumption you make. So we call it hypothesis testing, testing assumption. Oh, I believe there will be a relationship between road accident, and alcohol consumption. That is a hypothesis. Probably either stating in a null form or in an alternative form. There will be a significant relationship, or there will not be relationship, or alcohol may cause this, or alcohol may not cause this, or self-esteem can be influenced by an individual's social status or not. These are hypotheses. You are making a tentative statement that when you collect data, it will help you to actually verify if your data support or reject the hypothesis you've stated. So predictability, replication are some of the characteristics of science. Now, one important point in this particular study session is understanding the goals of psychology. What do they really do? What are they out there to do? What do they do? As a psychologist, what do you do? What is your major goal? What is your responsibility? Psychology as a scientific discipline has 4 goals it aims to achieve. So the 4 goals are the core of every psychological intervention, psychological presentation, psychological explanation, whatever a psychology does, directly or indirectly, is going in line with these four goals. So they are the specific goals of psychology include describing. One is to describe. Through this goal, through his goal, psychologists can distinguish between normal and abnormal behavior. Now, he has to be able to describe what he means by normal and what he means by abnormal. When do you explain, how do you describe a human behavior? When he is actually sitting quiet, what does sitting quiet mean in that context? Psychologists try to describe in order to help give a better understanding, because what you cannot describe, then you cannot solve, you cannot help, you cannot predict, you cannot be able to, you must be able to give step-by-step description and understanding about human behavior. Now, describing has to give, it has to go with giving a better understanding and more accurate perspective about human behavior, thoughts, and actions. Now, to explain is the second one. Once a specific behavior has been described, they try to give insight. So explanation has to do with giving insight on the possible cause of a behavior using theories, observation, or experiment, giving insight. Why is Mr. John sitting quiet? Oh, it is possible he had a problem. He had financial issues. Oh, he had financial issues. The first thing is that you actually observe that he was quiet. And how was his demeanor? How was his countenance when he was in that state? The countenance, he was looking sad. So explaining is why. Okay, because he had financial challenges. Oh, he had financial challenges. Is that why he's this way? So, okay, does it mean anybody that sits this way must have financial challenges? Psychologists will tell you no. Let us look for theories that explain sitting quiet. It can just be that he has been managing depression. So his depression has made him to actually pushed him to the sad side, and he is now in this state. So the next thing is prediction, making prediction. Making prediction based on available data. Now, the first and easiest thing and prediction I've made in recent times, particularly in clinical setting, is when I begin to see symptoms that looks symptoms from a depressed individual, and some of these symptoms that comes with hopelessness, helplessness, sadness, and suicidal ideation. With these symptoms alone, I can quickly make a prediction that if no intervention is given, this person has the tendency to actually commit suicide. So because of this, what you see, what you understand can help you to make prediction on what the person is likely going to do if this condition persists. So are you seeing how connected these goals are? The next one is control. Now, I gave example of probably a depressive case. I described what I see and what he expresses. I explain by getting insight of what he is going through. I predict the possible behavior that if this understanding I have about him persists, he is likely to react. The next one is control, mitigating issues, difficulties that human goes through in life. So that is what psychology makes psychology very interesting. And if I believe with these four goals, it has given you a clue of how psychologists, or what makes psychology masters of human behavior, because behavior is our concern. So what relevance does psychology have in everyday life? The relevance of psychology to human existence in everyday life cannot be overemphasized. Psychology as a discipline is used to understand various other domains of human society because human behavior is the central aspect or central focus of all psychological knowledge or psychological intervention. So, one basic relevance of psychology is giving solution to human problems. I just gave one now when I talked about depression. The ultimate of it is to give solution. Now, one of the maybe a more general goal is reducing, understanding situation, and finding ways to help human increase comfort and reduce pain. That is one solution we give to human society. Psychologists study human issues that can begin before birth and continue until death through one of our discipline, developmental psychology. Developmental psychology study from conception to death, and that is why even at death, psychology is still relevant. Why? Because we still do what we call psychological autopsy. So that's to tell you how important the knowledge of psychology is to human society. And other specific relevance include management of mental health related behaviors. This October 10th is a World Mental Health Day. You see, many psychologists became very engaged in trying to help people, educate people about what mental health is and how to mitigate them. Behavior modification. People develop bad habits. The responsibility of a psychologist is to see how they can modify this behavior from bad to good. Building healthier relationships. We, through some of our sessions, we do family sessions, particularly for those in the mental health setting, like the clinical psychologists. We do mental health, we do family session, we do individual session therapies that helps to build back healthier relationship, either in marital relationship, in familiar relationships, and the rest. In workplace, we try to equally build healthier relationship, teach healthier leadership styles that helps to either improve interpersonal relationship and productivity in an organization. Building leadership capacity, as I was trying to explain, help in understanding individual differences, and we conduct research. And basically, most of our activities as psychologists are based on research. Research is the core area and center of understanding human behavior. So subsequently, in subsequent lectures, you are going to see how research is relevant in understanding human behavior. So to wrap up this, I want you to, just as you are thinking or trying to understand what psychology is, probably some of you will have to want to change to come to psychology, because I know you are already getting interested in what we are talking. So as we continue, you're going to understand better, you're going to hear more, and you're going to see how relevant or how important it is to the human society and human existence. One of the discussion questions I will leave you with, you can do well to send your response at the chat box, is for you to discuss this assertion that every man is born a psychologist. For you to discuss this assertion that every man is born a psychologist. I used to tell people that there are two psychologists: psychology by birth and psychology by profession. So you are going to give me your view on the first one. Are you a psychologist? Tell me how and why. Then the second one is for you to explain how you use psychology in daily life. Using psychology in daily life. So you are going to tell me how you have either in one way or the other utilized some of those psychological knowledge I've expressed to go through life, solve day-to-day problems and even make meaningful relationship, meaningful progress in life. So I want to thank you for taking your time to listen to this, to participate in these lectures. We see in the next class.